go. Have the day today, dog. Offense, great drive.
Go!
He's up. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health System.
Day one of joint practice is underway here in Florham Park with the Atlanta Falcons. Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health. I'm Ethan Greenberg alongside Eric Allen and Quincy Anunwa. We'll hear from Caroline Hendershot momentarily. Intensity, guys, about to pick up on the field, specifically today with the full pads. We need to match that energy in the studio here. You guys ready to go?
Yeah, you're booming. Let's go.
I am booming. I'm ready to go. Let's just dive right into the first whistle then. Let's set the stage for today and tomorrow. The joint practices here. Quincy, we've recently seen around the league that there's been some scuffles in joint practices. So how do you thread the needle of competition, intensity, but also making sure that you get good work in?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. I think this is the most stressful part of playing football, right? Training camp, they make it very difficult. You know, you're up all night, then you're up early. You've got a lot of studying, a lot of things that make it really challenging to go out there and keep your mental focused. So I'm not too upset about the fights. I know that guys are trying to handle that stress while going on the field and competing against the same guy over and over again. So for guys to say, like, oh, there shouldn't be fights, it's really challenging in these moments.
EA, for the Jets this week, we watched the Eagles come here last year to Florham Park. We saw the Jets in Green Bay last year as well. What do you hope to see out of this Jets team, either compared to last year or just from what you've seen the first couple weeks of camp?
Real quick, echoing what Quincy just said, there are going to be skirmishes on the field today, 100%. That's going to happen. You just hope there aren't multiple brawls that it impacts practice in such a negative way that both teams aren't getting productive work in. Sounded like Carolina and New England had one of those sessions here earlier this week. Totally different situation than last year because the Jets lined up against a perennial contender in the NFC in the Green Bay Packers, who were led by Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Okay, that's a team that's going to advance far in the playoffs every year. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, very good team on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So the Jets really got their feet wet against two postseason teams last year. Quincy, this year, they're facing an Atlanta team that I think is in complete rebuild mode. You get a couple sessions here, then the Monday night game. And then the Giants might be a little bit further ahead than Atlanta right now, but they're in year one of their program under Brian Daboll.
Right, definitely. You know, the Falcons just brought in Marcus Mariota. They just drafted a great receiver. So they're definitely going to be in a different spot than the Jets are, than the Giants are. But it's going to be exciting to kind of see the matchups, all these different challenges that the team will have.
So, Quincy, you were a part of the 2018 joint practices. The Jets traveled to Richmond to take on Washington. That is a cool shirt, by the way. 60%. We've often heard Robert Saleh talk about this, how I think he mentioned it in the postgame speech, standing next to Arthur Smith. That's the Falcons head coach on the right. But Robert Saleh said, when you think you're done, you still have 60% more to give. I'm pretty sure that's a Navy theme right there. And
might be Navy SEALs. And
yeah, exactly.
One word that Saleh continues to stress throughout training camp is strain.
Yes. So going back to what I was going to ask you in Washington, like what's something that maybe doesn't meet the eye of a casual fan when you see joint practices? Because I think for most people, you're like, well, this is going to be cool. It's going to be intense. It's going to be one-on-one. You want to get the best of the other team. You want your team to win the practice. But is there something that maybe we don't know about from a player's perspective?
I would say it's very similar to when you get a new guy on your team that gets a lot of fanfare. So once you get into these joint practices, I think it's fun for guys to see, okay, this is the guy that I've been wanting to face for a long time. Let me see how he works for practice. Let me see how he prepares for these practices, and then let me go against him every day and really challenge him, because this is an opportunity for me to get better, opportunity for him to get better. And I think that right there is one of the good things. One of the things that you want to make the most out of it is like, let me challenge this guy and make myself better.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Also, EA, I thought it was really interesting hearing Jeff Ulbrich talk about speaking with the Falcons and being like, this is what I think we need to work on, meaning the Jets defense. So please, as much as you can, run this so we can get better at that. So if there are plays that maybe the Falcons get the better of the Jets defense, you always have to have that grain of salt in the back of your head.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a term that Rex Ryan used to use, put guys on ice skates. And why do you put guys on ice skates? Because you want to see them in different situations, and do they have the ability to adjust on the fly? Because that's what's going to happen in the regular season. So obviously, you're going to go over scripts with the opposing coaching staff, and these guys want to get the productive work in. But these coordinators are going to talk to the opposing coaches on the Atlanta staff and say, hey, listen, sometimes I want us to be in this lineup and you guys be in this, and I know it doesn't favor us, but I want to see what happens, right, Q?
Definitely. I think that's, like I said earlier, training camp is the one time during the season where you're really put to the test. It's the most stressful part of the year, but it's really the moment where you're going to make the best out of it. You're going to get the best out of it. You're going to become a better player, if you really take advantage of it. I think a lot of times guys get into these moments and like, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense, especially if you're running the offense that you already ran the year before. A lot of these plays will kind of get repetitive, but it's just so you can keep getting better.
The wide receivers, I think, just noticed that the camera's on them. Do you think that they're wondering who's mic'd? Because they're probably really confused. No, they're not. But they're probably very confused. Like, why is the camera following them?
It's FBI.
Oh, yeah. I will say this, though. For those guys, the wide receivers are going to have a good test, whoever lines up against Falcons cornerback A.J. Terrell, one of the better corners in the league. And this was supposed to be a big week for Zach Wilson, but that's not the case. Of course, he hurt his knee in the preseason opener. He underwent successful surgery on his knee in Los Angeles. He's back with the team set to start his rehab. But instead, Joe Flacco's under center this week against the Atlanta Falcons, and A.J. Terrell and Grady Jarrett and that defense. So from Joe Flacco's standpoint, still valuable reps on the table, Q.
Yeah, definitely. I think not only just him, but also the receivers, opportunities to get better. Working with a guy that's been in the league for a long time, really getting valuable reps with him. I think any opportunity that you can take to learn from him and then bring that into your reps with Zach in the future, I think everybody's going to grow from this moment.
EA, what do you hope to see from the Jets offense, particularly Joe Flacco against the Falcons today, let's say, as opposed to the preseason? Because this feels like it has the potential to be a very intense practice.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You just mentioned Terrell, right, on the outside. And the Falcons do have a few premier players, even though the roster is probably in the bottom half in the National Football League. And again, frankly, they're in rebuild mode there in Atlanta, but they do have guys like Grady Jarrett on the defensive side of the ball. I really like Cordero Patterson, who gave the Jets fits last year when they played over in London. And then Kyle Pitts is one of the finest young playmaking tight ends in the National Football League, probably the finest young tight end. But you mentioned Flacco. I thought he responded early on, right? He didn't play against the Philadelphia Eagles. His first practice, he came out smoking. You just want to have productive work, move the ball periods, get that familiarity down with your receivers. He's spreading the ball around quite a bit, and what I've noticed, too, is that he's got good connections with all the guys already, whether it's Tyler Conklin over the middle or it's the veteran or Corey Davis, or we're seeing Garrett Wilson get more reps, and we're seeing the yak after the catch. So Flacco, 37 years old, he's seen everything in the National Football League. So for him, this is just another day at the office.
Yeah, right. And the bad news for Zach Wilson here is that he's kind of used to this because last year he missed some time with the PCL sprain. A lot of focus goes to the mental reps. So I'm curious from your standpoint, Quincy, how much value is there in mental reps? And when people say mental reps, like what exactly does that mean? And what do you need to do to make sure that you're in a position to be ready when you're healthy?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think if I speak from my own experience, missing a whole year, you try to get as many mental reps as possible, but it's really, you don't really get the feel of the game until you're out there. Football is a game that you really can't get good until you play the game. You can watch as many reps, you can study as much film as you want, but it's nothing like playing in the game. So I think that that's going to be a frustration point for him, but I also think it'll be a great driver for him, right? Like once he gets on the field, he's going to really want to make up for that lost time. So I'm hoping that he's learning from Joe and watching these guys and making sure he's taking notes so that when he's out there, he's ready to go.
The Jets' regular season opener kicks off Sunday, September 11th at MetLife Stadium. Be there for the 2022 home opener, 1 p.m. You can secure your seats now at nyjets.com/tickets. Savings are available for groups of 10 or more. Now it's time to add a little bit of sauce to our spicy show here for joint practices. Our camp spotlight, Modster Gardener. And we circled these practices for a number of reasons when we saw the joint practices. One of them being that we thought we would get to see Sauce against Drake London, the number 8 overall pick, the first receiver drafted. London right now currently dealing with a knee injury. He did not practice the last time Atlanta took the field. We'll see what happens today. But regardless, EA, these are valuable reps for that guy, Sauce Gardner, against a new team.
Yeah, the dynamic has kind of changed on the outside for the Jets of late because DJ Reed back in the lineup, he was dealing with a hamstring issue. So for a few days out there, it was around a week, I'd say, approximately, you had Bryce Hall and Sauce Gardner getting the outside reps. Now, with DJ Reed back, you're seeing DJ Reed. It was Sauce yesterday. We'll have to see if that alternating on the outside continues. He's been impressive so far in camp. What is really stood out to me, Q, is that the veterans talk about him in a light that this guy does have special qualities, and he also approaches the game like a veteran. So this is positive at this point of his career.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing how he kind of battles today. I know Drake London may not play today, but just watching him maybe against Kyle Pitts, you know, that guy's like a receiver, tight end guy. They flex him out. They put him all over the field. So to give him that challenge today will be different than what he's been facing in practice.
I'm glad you mentioned Kyle Pitts because outside of Drake London, all eyes go towards Kyle Pitts in terms of a receiving threat. And I don't think Sauce Gardner and Kyle Pitts not going to line up one-on-one in terms of the practice schedule, but is there a scenario where you could foresee Sauce lining up against Kyle Pitts, let's say in team periods or something like that?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Like I said, they flex him out at times, and I think that'll be a great challenge for Sauce. I would personally, if I'm the defensive coordinator, I want to see how he goes up against him because there are a lot of times where you're going to have a corner against a tight end like him, and if you can lock down that side with a guy that's a receiving threat, that's a huge plus for the season.
Kyle Pitts, 6'6", 246 pounds. Sauce Gardner, 6'3", both lanky, both very talented, highly touted picks, both the number 4 overall pick, I believe.
Yeah, and the thing about Gardner, and this is something that Tony Oden, his position coach, talked about this week, was, yeah, he's big, and he's long, and he's physical, but most big guys, if you're talking about a 6'3", 200-pound cornerback, do not possess the speed that Gardner has. We're looking at his college stats right now. Everybody's talked about that, the 0 touchdowns allowed in college. There have been a few plays made on Sauce Gardner in camp, but all in all, very impressive. And like I said, I'm really interested to see how the reps on the outside go over the next 2 days into the game week because we had Sauce Gardner and Bryce Hall alternating days. Now with DJ Reed back, does alternating days continue, and at what time do they name a starter on the outside?
And of course, the one guy missing from this Falcons receiving core is the guy that's suspended for the 2022 season, Calvin Ridley. That would have been another good test for somebody like Sauce Gardner.
It would have been great to see all those guys. You're right. It's a great point about Ridley. It's a great point about the young London because it would have been fun, especially their physical dimensions, just to see London and Sauce go against each other on the outside.
Right, and another guy that's back in the mix on the outside or working back, Brandon Eccles. We haven't seen him lately, but EA yesterday, Isaiah Dunn had his best practice, 4 pass defenses. What does that say to you about the depth of this cornerback room that maybe wasn't existent to where it is now at this point last year?
Well, Bryce Hall's had a really strong camp. I know the attention, and rightfully so, is going to go to your number 4 overall selection and also DJ Reed. A guy who's so feisty on the outside, going to bring that veteran presence to the locker room, going to bring the dog out on Sundays. With that being said, you have a lot of depth, not only on the outside with Eccles. Brandon Eccles been dealing with some injuries here throughout camp, but the Jets are really high on him as well. Both of those guys were your starters last year. And then you got some depth on the outside too, but on the inside with Michael Carter, Javelin Guidry. But you mentioned Dunn yesterday. I think that's a guy we often forget about because we the Jets have the two new guys, and they aforementioned Sauce and DJ Reed, and then we automatically think about Hall and Eccles. But don't forget about Dunn.
Isaiah Dunn made the team as an undrafted free agent last year out of Oregon State. And I know that the Jets have a special guest in terms of the Atlanta Falcons coming to Florham Park. Well, we have a special guest here on Training Camp Live presented by Atlantic Health who's standing by with Caroline.
Good morning, Ethan, EA, and Quincy. I have my best friend, Marty Lyons, joining with me today. Marty, as you know, joint practices, there's so many benefits to them. What is the biggest benefit the Jets can take out of the joint practice with the Falcons today, their first one, and bring it to the game on Monday night?
Well, I think the big difference is you're not going against the normal guys that you go against every single day. You kind of like when you're facing your teammates every single day, you know what they're weak at, you know where they're strong. Going against somebody that you haven't gone against and having an opportunity to practice a couple days before the game, big benefit. I'm going to be watching the offensive line, the defensive line, because I still believe that the game is won up front.
Are there specific players within those matchups that you have your eyes on?
I'd like to see, what Quinnen Williams is going to do. He's from Alabama. It's time for Quinnen to take that next step. I think that one thing that got lost during the Philly game is to realize the depth of the defensive line. I thought Mike Clemens played outstanding late in the game for a guy that big to show so much hustle. I think that's promising for the Jets.
Mike Clemens did have a big game, but he told reporters yesterday he wasn't even pleased with his game. So there is another level to tap into with him. Now, I would be remiss if I did not ask about your teammate, Joe Klecko, being one of 3 finalists for the 2023 Hall of Fame. How proud are you to have played with him, but then also just that honor that he gets?
Well, I'm proud of playing with him. I'm proud to say that, 43 years later, we're still good friends. And it's like a parent. When your child wins an award or your child gets honored at school, you know what? You just smile ear to ear. And I'm just so happy for Joe. I think it's validated by the players that are in Canton already to speak up and say, hey, Joe was one of the best players. Now you hope that he gets 80% of the votes in January. And we're extremely proud of him. And the moments that I remember always had Joe Klecko involved. So it's good, and we'll keep our fingers crossed.
We will. We definitely will be. All right, guys, back to you.
Thanks, Caroline. Thank you, Marty. I just want to hit on Joe Klecko for 1 second here. Robert Saleh saw Joe Klecko, who watched practice yesterday, said that his handshake and his hands like cinder blocks. I've shaken Joe Klecko's hand. I agree with that. I'm sure you have. You definitely have, EA. Have you met Joe Klecko?
I've seen him from afar, but I've never actually met him.
As somebody who played for the Jets, Quincy, what do you hear about Joe Klecko and the history that he brought here with the New York Sack Exchange?
Yeah, you hear about the Sack Exchange all the time. They still have a huge mural on the wall. So you know about the history, you know about everything they did, you know everything they accomplished. So it's great to see this guy up for the Hall of Fame. I know he's going to win it. I think everybody in the Jets organization is hoping that they put him up there because he deserves to be there.
I'd love to see what Joe Klecko would look like if he were modern day on the field today, because I think he would wreak havoc, especially in this system that attacks upfield. But talking about the joint practices today, Marty Lyons mentioned Quinnen Williams. Well, let's take a look at the roster report. Quinnen Williams, one of the guys who did not practice yesterday with an ankle injury. Dwayne Brown, just conditioning. He probably will work into team periods over the next couple days. LaMarcus Joyner working his way back from an illness. Brandon Eccles seemed like he was gearing up to ride. Had a hamstring injury, really started pushing it. Nick Bawden's been out the past couple days as well. But from a defensive line standpoint, outside of Quinnen Williams, EA, don't you kind of have to look at Karl Lawson here? Because the last time that Karl Lawson was involved in a joint practice, he ended up rupturing his Achilles tendon and his season ended.
Yeah, the Jets let him go through his pregame routine against the Philadelphia Eagles. And Robert Saleh, he thought about it overnight, got up Friday morning, said he's going to let C.J. Mosley and Karl Lawson go through the routines and warm-ups. And then after they went to the locker room right before kickoff, he said, keep your helmets in your lockers, guys. So Karl Lawson is expected for sure to play against the Atlanta Falcons Monday night if you're going to the game. Everything is a step for him at this stage, coming back from such a serious injury. I think he's looked good at camp. One thing, Q, that has been stressed by the coaching staff so far, by Aaron Whitecotton, the defensive line coach, and Jeff Albrecht, the defensive coordinator, is that he's starting to look like the old Karl. But when you come back from an injury, you got to shake that rust off, and that takes time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's hard. It takes a special guy to really take that time to reflect. So I think in this moment right now, he's probably not actively thinking about the injury that happened before. I think he's just ready, hungry, biting at the bit to go out and compete against these guys. He's excited for the opportunity. And, you know, if anything, that thought is in the back of his mind. He's just ready to go.
Yeah.
So I just want to get to this, too. The Jets cut 5 players earlier this week, the first wave of cuts. So I just want to take a look at the rest of the important dates. Since we're in the thick of training camp right now, more cuts looming after the Falcons game. Of course, the Jets have practice today, another one tomorrow, August 20th, the game on Monday. Then roster cuts back-to-back weeks. 85 to 80, not a big move. But then 80 to 53, that is a giant jump, and that's really a big day across the league in the NFL. The waiver claims also come in that date, so this must be a very weird time of year, Quincy, if you're on the bubble, right?
They are handling a lot better than it was before, where you had so many different cuts before. I think it sucks for those guys that know that there's an opportunity they could be cut from 80 to 53, but it gives you a little bit more time to kind of put some film on the team. So I'm excited for the guys that have those opportunities that are on those bubbles, because this is just that push to say, okay, I need to make some plays right here. I need to go harder. But yeah, it's tough. And, you know, a lot of guys, you get to know these guys' families. You get to know everything about them. So, you know, as a team, you don't want to see these guys leave, but you hope that they put enough film on there so that they can go on another team and flourish.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's great, I think, what the National Football League has done with the practice squads.
Yeah.
Expanding the practice squads to what? I think it's a maximum of 16 now. So a lot of these guys who the Jets cut, they'll want to bring back. But where they have their most depth, most notably the defensive line that Marty Lyons was just talking about, they might want to try to bring a couple of these guys back, and they're going to end up on somebody else's roster.
And the other thing about the practice squad, which I think is a cool thing, that's a new rule since the COVID rules came into effect, that you can have veterans on the practice squad. Typically, there was a year maximum in order to be eligible or ineligible for the practice squad. That doesn't exist anymore. But let's talk about a crowded room. That was pretty impressive in the preseason opener. The running backs room, because this week Ty Johnson back into the mix. He did not play last week. Zonovan Bam Knight got his opportunity. He showcased his special teams value, which is imperative, EA, for somebody who's trying to make a roster as an undrafted free agent like himself.
Well, Michael Carter, who we saw on the screen out there with the running backs, he said it. He went to North Carolina. He played in those ACC games. He said, I'm surprised Zonovan Bam Knight was not drafted. To me, he should have been drafted, and we've seen him flash throughout the summer. The Jets have a stable of running backs led by, they aforementioned Michael Carter. We've talked about Breece Hall, how good he's been in camp. And that's another position group where the depth is there. We're looking at the players. Ty Johnson back. You got P. Ryan still as well. And Tevin Coleman. So how many running backs are you going to keep, Q?
I don't know, man. I think it'll be imperative for these guys to play special teams. I mean, you got to find your way on the field, and special teams is one of the best ways to do it. I will be in all the special teams coaches' offices every day trying to find a way to get on the field. I think if you don't take advantage of that, then you're really putting your chances up to, luck.
I want to focus in on Ty Johnson, because Ty Johnson last year got significant run with the Jets on the team. He had his ups and downs, right? He had a couple drops in the Saints game, but he was an effective player both as a rusher and a receiver for the Jets. The Jets add somebody like Breece Hall. They add Zonovan Knight. The depth is there. We just saw it. But for somebody like Ty Johnson, who was hurt last week with a hamstring injury, didn't play in the preseason game, like, how crucial is availability, Quincy, this time of year? And also for a guy like Ty, who has a lot of experience.
Super important. I think when you look at the depth that they have there, you can't really go out there and hope that you've done enough, because you've already been injured. You've already missed some time. So you have to make up that time somewhere, make up that ground somewhere. And so, like I said before, special teams, man, you got to find a way out there. Maybe punt protector, maybe gunner. You find your opportunity to go out there and make some plays, make some noise, and you'll make it very hard for those cuts.
And your guy, the Florida Gator, LaMichael P. Ryan, he's flashed. He led the Jets in rushing in the preseason opener.
Yeah, he had 50-plus yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a hard-nosed runner. You got to make the most of your reps in that offensive backfield. And the bottom line, games are going to be important, but so are practices. And again, it just speaks to the depth that Joe Douglas has assembled here. This roster has come light years, over the past, 18 months. It's really come a long way.
We were taking a look before. Oh, Michael Carter just lost his hat in warm-ups. He's running a little too fast here for joint practices. I wanted to point out DQ Thomas right there with the hair. He has a great head of hair. I just want to put that out there. Undrafted free agent linebacker. This is how we're going to wrap up Training Camp Live presented by Atlantic Health. The cover 4. All right, we're going to bring back in Caroline for one final question. We're going to go around the horn here. The matchup that we're all looking forward to the most the next couple of days out of joint practices is what? Caroline asked Marty, so it's only right that we start on the patio with Caroline.
Guys, I think the biggest matchup that I'm looking forward to, and I don't know when we'll see it, but it's got to be the rookies, Drake London, Sauce Gardner, going at it. I really want to see that just because I think they were each talked about quite highly in the draft process, and I just want to see both what they bring and how they compete with each other.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. EA?
Grady Jarrett versus the Jets' interior offensive line. When I look at the Atlanta Falcons, for me, yes, it's not a sexy pick because the guy's playing at the line of scrimmage, but I'm going back to where Marty Lyons talked about before, the trenches. I want to see how that Jets offensive line handles one of the finer defensive tackles in football in Jarrett.
Quincy, we going with your position, the receiver group? I feel like you have to.
Of course, Garrett Wilson and receivers against A.J. Terrell and Casey Hayward. I want to see that matchup. I want to see what they do out there. I think it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a lot of competitiveness, so that's where I'm watching.
Have you ever played against Casey Hayward?
I haven't, but I know a lot about him, man. He's a talented guy.
And, of course, this Jets wide receiver core very deep, especially compared to last year when the Jets had their joint practices. I'm going in the trenches, too. I'm going Karl Lawson in the Jets defensive line against the Falcons O-line. The Falcons O-line not necessarily highly regarded, I feel like, and I feel like the Jets have an opportunity to really take care of business up front. So I'd like to see what this Jets defensive line does because we see it every day against what we think, EA, is a solid offensive line. So what do you expect from this Jets D-line?
Big things. Just like we saw the other night against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Jets ended up having 5 sacks. Quinnen Williams, we don't know if he's going to practice today. I know Marty talked about him. Like we talked about on the practice report, he's dealing with a minor ankle injury. But Tanzau's smart. He had a couple sacks leading the way, and he's a guy who's going to be pushing for a roster spot. How about Michael Clemens? Jermaine Johnson is another guy who's flashed. But the rookies really catch your eyes in terms of their developments. Clemens, in fact, 1 sack the other night, 7 quarterback pressures, and Jermaine Johnson's been a beast out here on the field against his teammates. Let's see if these guys can get after the Falcons and get in that backfield and make things uncomfortable for Marcus Mariota, the starting quarterback, and Desmond Ridder, who this Jets coaching staff handled down at the Senior Bowl.
And Sauce Gardner's teammate at Cincinnati.
That's right. Good point.
So for you just mentioned Michael Clemens. I had a point there. He even got a Baldy breakdown after his preseason performance. I'd like to know what Baldy's nickname for Michael Clemens is because right now it's Debo from Friday, according to coaches. So
I think Baldy will stick with that.
You think he'll stick with Debo?
Yeah.
You like that nickname?
I like it. I'm a big Friday guy. I'm from California, so I like it.
Quincy, what are your final thoughts here as the Jets about to embark on a 2-day joint practice stretch with the Atlanta Falcons?
I'm excited to see how these guys compete today. I think that any opportunity to compete against somebody else in practice, facing somebody else, going head-to-head with a new opponent will be fun to watch.
EA, over under 1.5 scuffles over the next 2 days.
Easily over.
What if I just said today's practice?
Easily over. Yeah.
So what do you set the over-under? 3.5?
Listen, there's going to be a lot. Remember what Saleh said this week. Don't overlook that. He said he wants this group to be agitators. So they're going to agitate it. They're going to take it to the line, and then Atlanta might come out swinging first, and we'll see what happens after that.
We'll see what happens in a couple minutes here. That's all we have for Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health. We are back tomorrow for the second day of joint practices here at One Jets Drive. Everybody, enjoy your Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow.